Talk on this Wednesday morning, April 12th. We're coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University. This is Talking Point Live. I'm Eric Young. Jen Kohler is on vacation this week. Lucky her. She's off in Carlsbad, California, having some fun. So I've got a guest here with me this morning, Emily Havens from the St. George Spectrum. She's a reporter there with him. And in full disclosure, she's also a graduate of our program here. That was back before we were the media studies program, though. You came out of just communication studies.
Yep, that's right.
And you were obviously a journalism major here. You're also editor-in-chief of the Sun.
The Dixie Sun, the Daily Sun. Yeah, yeah. I was editor-in-chief of the Dixie Sun News. Yeah.
And now you hit the big times.
Oh yeah, the big times for sure. Yeah. I started at the Spectrum the Monday after graduation.
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you're coming up on a year's time then, working with the Spectrum.
Yep.
So how's that going?
Yeah, it's really good. We have a really good team, and we have a really good local community here. There's always stuff to write about here. A lot of great people. So.
Doesn't take much to stir up a little controversy.
That's true. That's true as well. Yeah.
I heard about your fizz piece.
Oh yes, yeah. People love their soda here, and I don't. So people were mad about that.
Want to go something a little more caffeinated, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't say that I'm playing it that way.
Yeah.
Well, what brings Emily on the show for us here with Talking Point Live is I've watched for since the beginning of this month, her efforts in going through and raising awareness on a number of different levels, having to do. And I don't know how to couch this, what the proper political correct term is. Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and as part of that, what I wanted to do was I joined forces with Support the Girls, which is an organization that is nationwide, and there are also some locations worldwide as well. They collect bras and feminine menstrual hygiene products for women in need. So, homeless women, refugee women, victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. So I wanted to do April to kind of highlight sexual assault, because a lot of women who are in poverty or victims of domestic assault are also sexual assault victims.
Sexual assault victims, that way.
Yeah.
And there's a range there that we could talk about in terms of sexual assault, not just rape, but obviously other types of assault.
Sure.
Can we talk about those a little bit?
Sure.
Maybe to raise some awareness in terms of maybe some of our viewers. By the way, we are coming to you live on Facebook.com as well as on the CEC the Community Education Channel YouTube channel too as well. So you can go through and once this closes out, you can rewatch the show. And if you have any questions that you want to ask after the show, I don't have Wi-Fi here, I'll be glad to go through and answer those online or perhaps defer them to you as we go. So let me get back to that original question though, in terms of what constitutes that notion of sexual assault?
I mean, gosh, it could be anything from a simple microaggression to an actual acting out physically of an assault, grabbing, touching, anything like that, any unwanted.
Anything that's unwanted or uninvited.
Right.
And that's where we get into this real kind of crazy niche in terms of what is uninvited. I mean, if somebody dresses a certain way, is there not an implicit, and I don't believe this for a minute, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, but isn't there an implicit invitation there as a result of perhaps how one might be dressed?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay, no means no, regardless of what that package might be, and there's some level of freedom within that that idea. And this is something that I go back and forth on with my spouse, because she's like, well, maybe, if there was a little bit more modesty involved, then we wouldn't have the enticement to go through and maybe elicit the kinds of responses that go on. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that's classic victim blaming. It's the only person whose fault it is for a sexual assault is the perpetrator. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, what you say. I mean, as far as, it doesn't matter what you say. If you give consent, then you give consent.
Right.
But,
So many things perpetuate that problem, though. How do we get away? So what we're getting into here is rape culture, certainly. Can you define that for us, what that means?
Gosh, it's such a complicated issue.
It is. That's why I'm asking you to do it.
Rape culture. I mean, it's the idea that, well, for one, it's something that we don't like to talk about. It's taboo to talk about. And for people to come forward and actually talk about it is really amazing. But since it is so taboo to talk about, it makes it easier for perpetrators to act on their impulses.
And yet we're having a hard time even talking about it here. In terms of rape culture, there's this overarching, almost, well, not almost, but this misogynistic idea in terms of the differences between men and women, and not necessarily gender in that respect, but in terms of sex, that, well, it's a foregone conclusion that if you are a woman, there's an expectation placed on you in terms of your sensuality, your sexuality, and how you might respond to signals that are given to you, even though you might not be receptive to those signals. Fair enough that way? Or?
Yeah, I think women are very, over-sexualized in culture, and I think that bleeds over into so many different aspects. So,
okay.
Yeah.
When we're starting to talk about the idea of sexual assault, you started in terms of sexual harassment. Would you classify that as a type of an assault, or?
I would. Yeah, I mean, it's unwanted, it's hurtful, it's damaging, certainly. Yeah, I would classify that as an assault for sure.
Invasive?
Invasive.
That's, as I go through, and I've researched this for a long time. There's a history of sexual assault with myself and with my family and things of what's going on. So I've been researching this for a while. And the main definitions really boil down to this idea of invasion.
Right.
Either a verbal invasion or obviously then a physical invasion. And that physical invasion could be anything just from proximity to a touch to obviously getting into penetration on any level in terms of that invasion of what's going on. How, For the Girls is a wonderful way to go through and not only raise awareness, but also maybe get the community more consciously aware of what's going on.
Sure.
What more can be done, though, besides that type of effort? We live in a school system here that when we talk about sex education, that all the ostriches bury their heads in the sand. What can be done differently, do you think?
I mean, certainly you just hit the nail on the head, starting with advocating and talking about it at early ages, making it age appropriate all across, all school boards and school districts here in Utah. 1 in 3 women, we just talked about this, 1 in 3 women will be victims of sexual assault in their lifetime in Utah as well, and that's the same as for domestic violence. What you really do when, when someone is a victim, they lose their dignity. And that's a really big, I think that's one of the biggest, most important pieces. And that's something that Support the Girls really tries to do, is restore that dignity in women who have felt like they had that taken away. Either, they're in need, they're a bad financial situation, or that they have been victims for so long and they've never felt, they had their confidence and their dignity taken away. So that's one way that we try to restore that by doing that for them. So
why is it? I'm playing devil's advocate there.
Okay.
Here, because I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. And it's funny that I have to go through and precursor anything that I'm talking about with this. Why is dignity attached to the integrity of a person's body?
It's so personal. It's so private and intimate, and when someone crosses that boundary uninvited, it is probably the most damaging thing to somebody.
Almost unrecoverable, it seems, in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. I mean, these victims, they deal with those repercussions for life sometimes, so.
A lot of times the abuse has gone on for maybe the majority of their relational life. At
exactly.
least in an abusive marriage or an abusive relationship.
And that can bleed into other relationships and cause just the spiral of, the spiral effect of abuse and trauma and difficult relationships.
So what happens to the esteem when that indignity is suffered that way? What goes on?
I mean, like someone's self-esteem, is that what you're?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, when that's taken away from you, you feel helpless, and since it's so hard to talk about, you feel like you can't talk about it.
Okay.
And you hold that in and you can internalize it, and that's really where the damage comes from.
There's really not a place to go in that respect. I mean, physically there are places to go, but perhaps in terms of mental health and seeking out help that way, but we don't really have, is there a support group here in St. George that helps victims of sexual assault that you're aware of? I don't know of a specific support group as far as mental health goes, but we do have women's shelters, right.
And influence centers to help connect women to those resources.
Okay.
But I don't think that there's one specific mental health organization for women who are victims. But
We live in obviously a little bit of a bubble here. There's quite a monotheistic influence here in terms of how a person's value is directly tied to their morality, or at least a perception of that morality there. And along with that, then it seems that the repercussions of being a victim of sexual assault makes it even more difficult to report on.
Sure.
1 in 3. That's a number that should be pretty shocking to all of us as we consider what that means in terms of our female population, not to mention the male population as well. No one's impervious to this idea of sexual assault.
Of course.
But just speaking in terms of women, 1 in 3, and yet where are the stories? Where's the reporting on this? Where are the people coming out and saying, I was abused, and I'm not going to suffer the indignity of that anymore. I'm going to come out. I'm going to talk about it.
Right. Well, right now you're talking right about the BYU's investigation that they did, the Pulitzer Prize winning investigation that they
Salt Lake
conducted.
Tribune won a Pulitzer here. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday?
Day before yesterday, I think.
It was,
Yeah.
On the story that ended up in Brigham Young University actually changing their policy in terms of not the standards, but how they apply those standards in terms of investigating charges of rape that happens on their campus.
It was called the Amnesty Clause, is that right?
Right.
Yeah. So the most amazing thing I think about the Trib's work on that was that to do investigative reporting so deep that you inspire other victims to come out and say, hey, this happened to me and I want to talk about it and I want to also influence others to talk about it. That's real journalism. And that's where the real impact was. In addition to, BYU changing how they handle that to where they are immune from the honor code for that.
Well, it took exceptional courage for these women to come forward and say, look, I'm the one who was put into the shadow of blame, basically, because I wasn't adhering to the honor code in terms of what was going on.
Right.
There are 3 specific terms that those who award the Pulitzer Prize use in terms of Salt Lake Tribune's coverage of this. I can't remember what they were offhand, but it was pretty shocking to go through and look at an institution like BYU and go through and say, you're doing it all wrong when it comes to going through and investigating these allegations and charges of sexual assault, of rape on campus that way.
Yep.
So what's been your response with your campaign going on here with Support the Girls? And tell us what we can do to go through and I understand you've reached one goal in terms of your feminine hygiene products.
Yes, and I think I set that a little too low, but or either that or the community is just amazing. It's probably both, but no, the response has been great. I've had so many people offer to help and so many people donate to the cause and come to our events and everything. We want to reach 200 bras before the month is over.
Okay.
And I think yesterday, gosh, I can't remember the exact amount, but I want to say that it was around 60 bras yesterday. So, and
I thought you were a lot more than that. Okay.
Yeah, but we've been doing different events and things like that. Everything is going to go to the Dove Center this time around.
Okay.
So our local women's shelter.
So you've yet to make the donation. You're still in the acquiring phase.
Yeah.
And so how do people donate? What do they do?
So they can drop them off to the Spectrum and Daily News, which is at 275 East St. George Boulevard. And we're open 9 to 3. That's when the front doors are open. Okay. Or they can contact us, and we're willing to do a pickup as well for people who can't leave their homes or they don't want to come drop them off for whatever reason. So.
Anything else that can be done besides feminine hygiene products and bras?
Yeah, people are donating like toiletries and things like that. Those are always needed.
Sure.
But really, Support the Girls was founded because feminine hygiene products and bras are very rarely donated. Since they're hidden under clothing, you don't think about it.
Right.
And for many women, it's like bras are kind of a, an evil necessity every morning. Right. They don't think about what it would be like to not have that and to have to go to a job interview and feel uncomfortable. So really that's where restoring the dignity comes in. And I think that women have a profound way that they can influence others. We have that power to influence others. And so if you think about a woman who suddenly feels confident enough to go to a job interview and she gets that job, then think about the circle of influence that she has after that and how many people she can help after that. So.
Any anecdotes to that effect? Have you seen that yet? We're still in the process.
That's the amazing part. I've been so inspired just by people coming to donate things that I don't know how I'm going to react once I actually give it to the Dove Center and do that. I did have the opportunity to interview a woman who was living at Switch Point, the homeless shelter here. and she through a past article, and she had four or five girls who were under the age of 6. So they were all living in this, homeless shelter. She's not thinking about, wow, I should buy myself, or I should go get a new bra, because I need to that's going to cause health. This like torn up one is going to cause me health problems later on, or wow, I need to focus on my hygiene, my feminine hygiene, or else I'm going to get some infections or anything. She's not focused on that. She's focused on her children.
Right.
So that's really where this organization is helping women. So.
Is it safe to say that those who are fleeing domestic violence, the last thing that's really on the top of their minds is
exactly,
do I have the right underwear along with me, and
yeah,
how am I going to take care of the next menstrual cycle, that kind of thing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when they flee a dangerous situation, they can't always take all their stuff with them,
So I know the Duff Center has received a lot of support. Well, adequate support, I guess, through the community.
Sure.
That's probably the wrong word too there in terms of what goes on. Probably the most influential way we can all support is through some type of financial donation as well. Is For the Girls set up to take money and
yeah,
as well as working?
Yes. Yeah, and we actually we had a charity hike planned where it was a $20 donation to come hike with us, and it was led by a local. He actually works at the Spectrum as well, but he's very knowledgeable about all the trails around here. He writes about them, and he's done it for years.
Who's
so
that?
Brian Passy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Brian Passy. So he was leading the hikes, and it was a $20 donation fee. So that's going straight to support the girls.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And that went to the Snow Canyon Overlook. Is that
yes.
right?
Yep.
Are you going to do that again today?
Yes.
Plug it.
Yeah. Today we're meeting at the Red Mountain Trail that's just past Snow Canyon. And
it's an equestrian trail as well.
Yes, it is.
So there's a corral there if you're looking for it.
Yes.
Just off the highway as you're heading towards Enterprise. Then on the west side of the highway, there's the Red Mountain Trail.
Exactly.
There's a corral there.
Yeah, so we start there, and then we will go to the Snow Canyon Overlook Trail after that.
Okay.
So yeah,
and it's a nice hike.
It's about a 5-mile hike, moderate, but it's a really beautiful day today.
A little rocky, a bit of an ankle twister on the first part.
A little bit, yeah, and some sandy areas, but it's beautiful at the end.
The view up there is pretty spectacular. And you're doing that today. What time?
4:30.
At 4:30.
Yep, 4:30 today.
Okay.
We do it a little bit later in the afternoon because the way that the sun hits the canyon right when we get there, the timing of it is just beautiful.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
And $20 to join you, is that right?
Yep, $20 or a donation of new bras or feminine hygiene products of equal or more amount than $20. So.
As far as that value goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. We're also doing we're holding a concert at the end of the month on the 29th, and that's going to be at Jazzy Java's Rock and Roll Grill.
Oh, what a great venue.
Yeah. So that's a $5 cover. It's going to start at 7, and we have 3 local artists who's going to be.
And who's that going to be?
First, it's going to be Devin Vasquez. She's going to do an acoustic set, and then Celestial, and they're kind of emo punk, more hard rock. And then after that is going to be Lace, and they're middle of the road, like alternative rock. So. Okay. Yeah.
All female performers with this?
No, not all female performers, but they're all local.
Okay.
So.
No, it's Lace, not so much the terrestrial one. Interesting.
Celestial,
name for it, Celestial,
yeah.
As a punk group as it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm trying to come up with some more content here in terms of getting into the issues. So how do we? It's one thing to go through and raise money or get donations in terms of what's needed out there, but it's kind of like BYU handing out rape whistles in a way in terms of troubled areas that might be on campus. Here's the solution to this. I'm asking the hard questions here in terms of full societal change, social change. How do we make the change?
In my...
Let me go ahead. Go ahead. I got a follow-up question with you as well. So
okay. In my opinion, I would say proper and comprehensive sex education that's appropriate for all ages. I think that's really a good place to start.
Aside from the mechanics, what does that mean?
Comprehensive, that means, you cover obviously anatomy and things like that.
That's what I mean by the mechanics.
Exactly, the mechanics, but getting beyond and talking about,
the sociality of sexuality?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Gosh.
So, okay, here's my backup question then. So you're a mom, okay? You have a little girl.
2.
And what's that conversation going to be with her?
I ask myself that question all the time. it's hard to come up with age-appropriate, content to talk with them about. But I think you start by talking to them about what they believe is okay. Asking them, like, what do you think is okay for you? What do you feel comfortable with? And then
she has to have some kind of structure, though, in order to come to some idea of what's okay.
Right.
And you term what's okay morally, what's okay sexually, physically. What are you talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, all of it. What I think you need to start by, just saying this is okay. People, if someone comes and like touches you on the arm and that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's not okay. So things like that.
So maybe more of a standpoint of you're okay regardless. There's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Depending on the kind of attention you garner, depending on
right.
what's going on around you, you are always fine in terms of who you are, your moral value to yourself and to me as your parent, that kind of thing.
But what happens to you doesn't define you.
Okay, that's what the point I'm trying to get to.
Right.
Is how do you do that?
I am such a new mom. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I think that's the $1 million question.
But
there.
You've got a blank canvas here to work with
and it's terrifying.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm coming on the back end of things here. My youngest is 18 years old, and she's been through it in terms of sexual assault. And what's been fascinating and heartbreaking at the same time is to see the hit that her own self-esteem has taken as a result of that invasion.
Right.
And see her courage in overcoming that, and now coming out and speaking to groups about that and saying, in terms of rape culture, this is not okay anymore. We need to turn this around and need to realize that any person, male, female, it doesn't matter, any person who goes through and objectifies another individual based on physical attributes, or based on physical prowess or sensuality or sexual, even sexual identity, constitutes this concept of rape culture.
Right. And it's interesting because, when women are doing it for entertainment purposes, or they're doing it, to make money of some sort, like celebrities and things like that, it's okay for them to show more of their bodies and to be more sexualized. But once they do that, like here in Utah, where we're a little bit more conservative and everything, once you do that here and you do show more skin, it's like, oh, if something happens to you, it's your fault. It's just classic victim blaming. So
we start correcting that with our boys or young men that way? Do we?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's, you don't, you tell boys that they, just because a woman isn't asking for it unless they're asking for it. So.
Nonverbals notwithstanding. So if you had a 12-year-old boy, what would you say? I hear he is sitting in front of you. Okay. What would you tell me? And maybe 12 was too late.
Maybe
8, 7.
Oh gosh.
I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. You don't have the right to invade anybody. You don't have the right to invade anybody's personal space unless they allow you to. And you can't look at somebody you can't judge somebody based on the way that they look or what they're doing and think that it's okay for you to act on that.
Regardless of how much sexualization's happening.
Exactly. Regardless of how you feel. Right.
Mainstream media.
Right.
Internet porn is a couple clicks away, no matter what kind of firewall devices you have going on. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You were here on campus during Take Back the Night.
I believe so.
If I recall that way. I don't know I can't remember if you wrote about that, but it was at a time when nationally we're getting into what does consent mean in terms of sexual consensus within a relationship, within a dating situation. Do you want to visit that a little bit?
Sure.
Do you understand where I'm going to?
Yes, I do.
Eventually, no wasn't cutting it. It had to be. You have to have the yes, or do I have them just the opposite here?
You have to have the. Sorry, what?
The yes. The yes has to be confirmed in order for this to become consensual at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you're married, that's not absolutely. That's not an invitation to.
Again, devil's advocate. I know this. I'm just going through it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Right. I mean, you never have the invitation to rape somebody, regardless of whether you're in a relationship, you have already had sex with them, or maybe you've almost had sex with them and you think that it's going well. The second that somebody says no or tells you to stop, then
that's it.
Absolutely.
It's over with.
Yeah.
But,
and it's hard to read, sometimes, gosh, you get into such tricky water with like nonverbal cues and stuff like that, but.
Yeah, that's an interesting field to look at. About 50% of the population can adequately or correctly go through and assess what's happening non-verbally. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other half, clueless.
Wow.
There, and in fact, when certain physiological tendencies have it take over, when the hormones start going, and obviously, especially with testosterone in men. Men become more blind to what those signals are, or they become more, if you pardon the expression, more cherry picking in terms of, oh, well, she made eye contact with me, or she touched her hair, or so this all means that maybe I've got the green light.
And just reading into it more,
and instead of waiting for the verbal confirmation.
Right.
And some would argue, well, doesn't that take the romance out of it?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that consent is sexy, so. That's my opinion.
Very good, okay.
And that's something that, should be taught in comprehensive sex ed, not abstinence. It should be taught, like, if you want to have sex, let them know, do it smart. And
how do we disconnect sexuality from morality? Again, another hard question, but in terms of going through and saying, most young people grow up, they go through puberty, they go through adolescence, and within that they go through a hormonal change that goes through and says, wow, I'm a sexual being. And then they're told, well, you can't be a sexual being.
Right.
Where it's completely natural. And then they tie that to some aspect of worthiness or moral accountability. Do we need to disconnect that, or do we need to redefine that? Again, I'm still looking for the social change. How do we make people feel okay about their sexuality while they respect the sexuality of the people that are around them?
I would say redefining it, like you're saying. I mean, just what you're talking about, making sure that you teach kids from a young age that, like, it's okay to be a sexual being, and here are the reasons why, and here, you're not bad because you do this, and so.
Got goosebumps on that one. My guest today is Emily Havens. She works as a journalist for the Daily Spectrum here in St. George, and she's currently heading up our local version of Support the Girls.
Yes.
Little play on words there.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much. We call them our supporters.
Your supporters?
Yes.
I noticed there's also a movement afoot to remove girls from the vernacular, that we refer to women as women and not girls. The girls maybe has kind of a sexualized idea, not to go through and denigrate your campaign, but I think it's interesting in the vernacular of what's politically correct anymore.
Sure.
That's an interesting take on what's going on. So to donate, we'll cap this off here at the end of the show. What do we need to do? We go to the Spectrum's office?
Yes, the Spectrum and Daily News, and that's located at 275 East St. George Boulevard. And we're open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And there's a little donation bin off to the right in the lobby that you can donate off to.
So hygiene products, feminine hygiene products.
Yes.
And gently used or new bras as well. You want to define gently?
Yes, gently used, so not torn in any way. The underwire is still intact. And we take any kind of bras, any size. And
so sports bras.
Yep, sports bras, nursing bras, maternity bras, lacy bras, any kind of bras. And actually the larger sizes are a little bit more in need because they are more expensive, they're a bit more rare to find. Right. So, yeah.
Okay. I will be putting a link on Talking Point Live's Facebook page to this as well, so you can find more information there. And if you have questions about the show or comments, please post them on our Facebook page. And if you have questions that way for Emily, I'll be sure to forward those along there as well. Emily, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. This was great.
Talking about a sensitive subject that we need to have more conversations.
It's so important.
About that way. Make sure you join us next week. Jen Kohler, my partner, will be back, and we'll probably be talking about Sean Spicer this time next week. See how that week goes on. Remember Pepsi, and then somehow United Airlines, and then Sean Spicer seems to go through and eliminate it all in one fell swoop of one press conference as it goes. So be sure to join us next Wednesday, Talking Point Live at 9 o'clock, coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Young. We'll see you next week.